Okay, so thank you so much everyone for joining us today for our special Garden Style San Antonio webinar. Today we're going to be going through some of the basics on how to operate your irrigation controller. So walking us through this today are two of our amazing irrigation consultants, Marty Garcia and Brad Weir. Marty is our senior conservation consultant and our go-to guy for all things irrigation. He's got over 40 years experience in plumbing and irrigation and 4 different state licenses. Brad, on the other hand, has years of experience in South Texas landscaping and public horticulture. He's sort of our departmental hummingbird whisperer. He's very good at all things hummingbird also. My name is Sarah, and I am a planner in the conservation department, and I'm going to be helping to host this webinar today. So I'll be fielding a bunch of your questions towards the end of the webinar. Brad, if you go to the next slide. So before we get started, I just want to remind y'all about some of the webinar functions. So at the bottom right of your screen, you should see both a chat and a Q&A button. You might have to click on the icon with 3 dots in order to access one or both of those functions. And on top of that, we are recording this webinar, so don't worry if you miss something. It will be posted to our Garden Style San Antonio website, probably in the next few days to a week. And you can always refer back to that or our other resources if you are looking for something we talked about today. So now we've gotten that all settled, let's go ahead and get started with our presentation. Can you go to the next slide? Perfect. So like I had mentioned, today we're talking about all things irrigation. From the past up until now, there have been many changes in the way that irrigation controllers look, but at their heart, at their core, they're doing the exact same thing. Next slide. And to begin with, we're going to go over to Marty, who is going to do a live demonstration of how to program your irrigation controller. All right, and Marty, you should have permissions now.
Okay, alrighty. Hi, and thank you, Sarah. Today, I'm going to go through the basics on programming a controller, a residential controller. I know they can look intimidating and scary, but they're really, really easy to program. So don't let that intimidate you. And they basically all have the same feature. If it's a different company, different brand, they basically, all residential controllers have basically the same features. They might be in a different place, but they are the same features. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and go around the dial first, and I'm going to explain what each function is. And then I'm going to come back and show you how to program that feature or that program or that feature or that. All right, so let's get started. So this is a Rainbird controller here, and it's on run right now. Auto is exactly what it says right here, run, that it's set to run the schedule program. Okay, that's what that is. Date and time is setting the current date and time and year in the controller. That's what this is. Start times. This is the start time. This is what time you want your cycle to come on, your program to come on. Whether it be 2 in the morning or 7 in the morning, this is where you set that. This is how long you want your sections or your zones or areas to run. This is called run times. Run days. This is how often you want your irrigation to run. We do only recommend 1 day a week, which is sufficient, but this is where you set that feature. Sensor. This is your bypass. This is your rain sensor bypass. Normally, on a lot of controllers, it's up here on the right. It's a little toggle switch, but in this case, it's here and it's included in the features. Now we're coming up to my best friend and my best feature right here. This right here is the neatest feature on the controller. This right here, with this feature here, you can control your irrigation controller with one push of a button. And I'll get back to that and explain that when I come back to it. Manual, we all know what that is. If you want to run a particular zone, you put it on manual and it'll run that particular zone and only that zone. And of course, good old off right there. That's a nice one to learn there. It's easy. After a rain event, come and turn it off. Don't unplug the controller. It's like any other appliance in your house. You know, if it's off, it's off. It doesn't need to be unplugged. Okay, so let's get started on the features. And like I said, run auto is exactly what it says. Some might just say run, but in this case, it says both, auto run. That's going to run your program that we're going to set today. Okay, so let's set the date and time. All right, so today is July 1st, but let's say I wanted July 4th. And remember, whatever's blinking is what you're programming. Okay, so if I wanted July 4th, I would go to plus and I would go to 4th. And then let's say I wanted to change the month. I would go ahead and cursor to the right arrow after setting the date, and then set my month, more or less. Okay, same thing with the year. Cursor right, more or less. And once you've set the time and date, the current time and date, the controller already knows what time it is and what day it is. All right, so let's get started on the start times. This is when you want your irrigation to come on, your cycle to come on, or your program to come on. So let's go ahead and set it for 7 a.m. So what are we going to do? We're going to go forward. We're just going to hold down the button until we get to 7 a.m. Okay. Make sure to cursor to the right that there is no other start times. I have it 2 o'clock, so let's eliminate that. So remember, all controllers pretty much right past 12 a.m. is off. So let's see if there's another one. No. Okay, so we only have one start time, and that's all you need. You only need one start time, one program per week. Okay, so that's 7 a.m. for that. And remember, if you can go back to all the programs, and if there's information in all the other programs, delete them and just have one program in program A, one day, one start time. So that way, what you see is what you get. Okay, so let's go to run times. Okay, this is how long you want your sections to run, or your zones, or your areas to run. Okay, in this instance, if I wanted my section, zone number 1, to run for 10 minutes, I'd hit the plus. Okay, and then I would cursor to the right again to go to zone number 2. And let's say I wanted to bring it down to 15 minutes. What do? Negative. And so forth and so on for all the zones that you have. Okay, then run days. This is how often you want it to run. Okay, so let's say Monday was your watering day. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off Friday. So we're going to go back on this week here. And whatever's flashing, remember, that's what you're programming. Whatever's flashing on the screen, I want it off. So what do? You hit negative. So we're going to go back all the way to Monday. And Monday is currently off. Plus is on. And now Monday is programmed on. Okay. Your sensor. This particular one here, like I said, a lot of other controllers have a little toggle here, on and off. This one here, you would just hit the negative and it would deactivate the sensor. And speaking of a rain sensor, this is one here that I have here. This is a wireless rain sensor here. And did you know that all controllers in the city of San Antonio must have a rain sensor associated with it? It is city ordinance. What's good about a rain sensor, it will suspend watering of your cycle right before the cycle, during the cycle, and right after. If you get a real good rain, you know what your best bet is? To come over here and put it there on off and leave it off for as long as you can. And okay, so now that we've done the sensor, we're coming to my best friend here and what's called the seasonal adjust, and the best feature on the controller. Like I said, it's the fastest, easiest way to control the controller. All right, so go ahead and put on seasonal adjust. And as you can see down here on our recommendations as far as percentages per month, July, August, and September are at 100% because it's the hottest part of the year. So with a controller that has this feature, what you want to do is you want to set it for the longest that you're going to run the zones, cycles, the zones, the sections, or areas. So you're going to set your longest run time at 100% for the hottest part of the year, which is July, August, and September. So let's say, for instance, we're coming to October. So what does this say? It says 70 to 80%. So we're going to set our dial to seasonal adjust, and we're going to go negative to 80%. And that's how easy that is. But let me give you another way that it works so that it's easier for you to understand. Okay, so let's go ahead and put it back to 100%. Okay, so let's go look at run times on zone number 1. I have 10 minutes. That's the longest that I'm going to run it at 100%. Okay, so we're going to come back here and we're going to put that 80% back in here for October. Let's go see what it did to the run times. it brought it down to 8 minutes. Not only zone 1, but all the zones in the system. Your start time stays the same, the day stays the same. The only thing you're changing by percentage is the run times. Okay, so like in March here, in March, it's like a graph. So you slowly come up. March is 50 to 60, April is 60 to 70, and then it goes up 10, 10, 10, and then it peaks out. And in the fall, you start backing off and then off in the winter. And that's what seasonal adjust is. That's why it's so cool, because it's just one push of a button. Okay, you can get this graph here, right here. You can go to Garden Style SA, and it's under seasonal watering, and you can get this graph here on our recommendations as far as percentages go. All right, so let's go to manual station. And of course, like I said, manual station, you select your station, you select the time that you want it to run, and you go ahead and hit on, and it'll come on, and it's manual station. And like I said, this is a good feature here, especially after a rain event, off. Okay, that's about it, and that's how easy it is to program the controller. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let you off and go to Brad, because Brad's going to go through some things that a controller can do wrong, and for you what to look for when it's doing something wrong. So let's go ahead and go to Brad.
Thanks, Marty. So Marty's given us an excellent account on the basics of how to program a controller. My segment is on what can go wrong. We'll call this troubleshooting, or how not to program a controller, since making a mistake on that programming can be costly when the bill arrives. The picture you're seeing at left is what it looks like when you have a leak. But this isn't what it will look like when you make a mistake on the controller. There really aren't any red flags. What it will look like when you make a mistake is just that the sprinklers are running, but not when you're expecting them. This can really add up, since remember, your sprinkler, your irrigation uses more water when it runs once than you do an entire month. So you kind of want to set it to run as little as possible to get the job done. What's the most common problem with sprinkler settings? What do sprinklers have in common with pancakes? It's called stacking.
Brad, can you go ahead and share your screen, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Just a second. Okay. Are you seeing pancakes?
No.
Are you seeing that yet? Sorry, bear with us for a second.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So what we were saying, we're talking about what sprinklers have in common with pancakes. It's called stacking. As Marty pointed out, the basic setup, what you're trying to do with your sprinklers is to run it one day a week. So one start time, one program, and to deliver a week's worth of water when you do it. It's like a ½ inch or an inch of water on your entire landscape. Think of that as one pancake. If you do 4 pancakes a month, once a week, that's basically what your landscape needs. But the surprise on many irrigation controllers comes when additional water cycles or stacking occur inadvertently. And your irrigation may be running 4 times a week, 8 or 16 times a month. What does it look like? It just looks like the sprinklers coming on again and again if you're not really watching. But if you're not really watching, you won't see it. But they'll be coming on when you're not expecting them. If it runs at night, you won't see it. All you'll see will be the wet ground in the morning. It could be dew, right? If you really want to keep an eye on your irrigation, if you don't have Wi-Fi, you can always use one of those rain gauges that you hang on your fence. You can put it out in the landscape, and if it's filling up with water, that's your sprinklers doing it. You can also, this is a shameless plug for SAWS Conservation's water sensor rebate. You can get a flume sensor for your water meter that will track when your water is really coming on. And with the miracle of the modern internet, you can see when it's running, from the laundry to brushing your teeth, and you can check your work on the programming of the irrigation. If you find the sprinklers running unexpectedly, the most obvious and common reason is just that the clock is wrong. Remember, if you see your indoor clock splashing and you're having to reset your clocks after a storm, don't forget the most important clock in the house, your irrigation controller. Remember, many controllers will accommodate a 9-volt battery, so they'll remember your program and the time of day, even when you lose power. It's a great way to avoid this problem. But a more serious problem is that you're stacking irrigation and you're running additional water cycles when you don't mean to. The controller you see, it's a Rainbird RC. It's a 1980s style controller. One of the easiest controllers to set, one of the hardest to mess up. It's just a set of pins on the wall. It's seven pins for each day of the week, 24 pins for each hour of the day, and you just push in the pin when you want it to come on. Really hard to mess up, and voila, it's set. But you make the mistake of leaning up against this controller as you're coming in the back door with groceries, and all of a sudden you've mashed in all the pins at once. And what you'll see is the sprinklers will turn on and just run continuously. They'll run for days if you push in all those pins. On a more modern digital controller, it doesn't show you everything at once, so you need to know how to control it. No pins, it should be easier, right? But this user, for instance, is setting sprinklers to run at 12:15 a.m. But look again, notice, this is the start time. This is actually the second start time. This controller is running at 12:15 a.m. It's going to run the entire program for the second time in the middle of the night when you're never going to see it. Remember, you only need one start time to run your entire irrigation program. But you do need to check them all and make sure there aren't extra start times on there, as Marty pointed out. One of the best ways to guard against this kind of stacking, until you're familiar with the controller, is just to set it to run when you can see it. SAWS consultants will always recommend just a daybreak start time, 7 a.m. So you can see it come on, be familiar with its cycle, and know when it turns off. In stage 2 water restrictions in the city of San Antonio, so you're required to, your irrigation is limited between 7 and 11 p.m. But when water restrictions are lifted, a lot of people go back to these midnight start times, and that's when mistakes are made. So remember, only one start time. Another good rule to avoid stacking is just to pick a day and stick with it. If your run times are set correctly, if you're running it long enough, you're delivering a week's worth of water on whichever day you select. It's pretty easy. But watch out for the interval setting that you'll see on some controllers. The picture at left is an interval of 2. We actually don't use intervals much in San Antonio for this reason, but this controller is set to interval of 2, which means it's going to come on every other day. It's going to come on 4 times a week. It'll come on 16 times in a month. That's a lot of water. What we use in San Antonio, because of water restrictions, is the picture in the center. It's called custom settings, where you assign the raindrops to the days you want to come on. But you want to guard against the urge to pick all the raindrops. So the pretty raindrops like these. The controller in the middle is set to run 3 times a week. And the one on the right side is actually set 3 days a week, twice a day. It's set to come on 6 times a week. That's 12,000 gallons of water a week. That's a lot. A third reason for inadvertent stacking of programs, this is when you're seeing water run that you're not trying to, it might be multiple active programs. And one of the most fundamental errors in programming is to ignore the letter on the screen. I always remind customers to remember the alphabet. So remember the Muppets every time you approach the controller, and sing the alphabet if you need to, so you'll remember to check that letter on the screen. It'll be A, B, C, or D. Remember, on a program-based controller, all those programs are active. And you can assume they're all active, so you need to check them all whenever you set the controller. And don't forget to pay attention to which one you're trying to work on. At a house, you're usually just going to use the A program. At a hotel, they might use all 4. Disable any programs that you don't want to use, because they're all running, even though it can only show you one at a time. Finally, Marty mentioned seasonal adjust. It's the smart button for the controller. We all love it. It works great, but you've got to know how it works on your particular controller because they're not all the same. On a Weathermatic, for instance, you'll set all the months in advance. So it'll actually increase your water as you approach the summer. It'll increase it up to 100%, even if you forgot that you're using seasonal adjust a long time ago. On a Rainbird RZX, the baseline setting for seasonal adjust is actually 0. So if you set it to 100%, you're going to be adding 100% of your runtime. You're going to be doubling your runtime. You need to know where the basic middle setting is to use seasonal adjust, and it's different on different controllers. But remember, if you have a Weathermat or a Rainbird RZX, you may want to check your owner's manual. And so that's a lot about digital controllers, and that is the industry standard right now. That you see a lot of those since the 1980s. But a lot of new controllers you'll actually run off your cell phone on mobile apps. And Sarah's going to tell us a lot about that. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Brad. So kind of like Brad mentioned, there are some tricky things that can be involved with irrigation controllers, and specific controllers may have a certain quirk to them that may make them even a little more difficult to understand. So to kind of piggyback off of his earlier Muppets example, if you find yourself feeling like Oscar the Grouch when you're going to change your controller or even just check what the settings are, if you're at the point where you're thinking about getting a different controller or just make a change, that may be an opportunity for you to start looking at smart irrigation controllers. Next slide. So what exactly is a smart irrigation controller? Well, it kind of depends on who you ask, but pretty much everyone will tell you at its very base level, typically it's a smartphone-based irrigation controller, something you can operate from an iPhone, an Android, and what is really cool about that is that means no matter where you are, as long as you have Wi-Fi or cell service, you can make changes to your irrigation system. You can change run times, you can turn it off, you can run it. You have complete control no matter where you are. Now, a lot of these smart controllers also have built-in functions that look at weather data, either current or future or past, and they use that information to make adjustments about how much your system runs. So in my head, I separate them out into two categories. You've got your smart controllers that are predictive, which is they look at the current weather as well as the forecasted weather for your area, and they try and make decisions about when to run. So for example, if they see, okay, it's going to rain tomorrow, I'm going to hold off on running the system today in anticipation of that rain, and that could save you some water. Alternatively, if it looks at the weather and it says it's going to be really hot this weekend, there's not any rain forecasted, it may decide to run more in that week. The other category is what I refer to as seasonal adjust smart controllers. And what these typically do is they look at the current weather right when they decide to run, like right beforehand, and it decides whether it should run full capacity based on the original settings that you put in to the controller, or if it should back it up or lower it a little bit. So earlier Marty was talking about how cool seasonal adjust is because you can adjust all of your zones with a single click of a button. You can take everything from 10 minutes down to 8 minutes just by bumping it down to 80%. And that's essentially what these seasonal adjust controllers do. It's just that it makes that decision for you by looking at the weather. So a couple of the huge benefits, reasons why people purchase these smart controllers, are the ease of access. Let's say you have all the weather controls turned off and you've flown to Europe and you're there for 3 weeks, and your sister-in-law texts you and says, hey, it's pouring, it's going to be pouring all week. No matter where you are, you can shut off your irrigation system and you know that it's not going to run. It doesn't have to be something like, oh man, I forgot. The other thing, of course, is those weather controls. So again, you fly to Europe or you're out of town or you're at work and you realize, oh, it's raining outside. You don't have to worry about your irrigation system going off because if you have some of those weather controls turned on, they'll skip running for you because they'll already know that it's running and you don't need to worry about it. All right, next slide. The thing with, oh, there you go. So part of because we have found that these are pretty beneficial for people, we do have a program for this. It's a coupon program. And right now it is a $100 coupon towards a Rachio 3. These are devices that go up to 16 zones. So if you have more than that, you'd want to reach out to Rachio about figuring out that program, because it is a limit of 1 coupon per account. But the Rachio 3 is, like I had mentioned earlier, one of those predictive watering smart controllers. And what we have found is a lot of people see the most savings in spring and fall if they use some of the watering weather-based predictive functions. However, in the summertime, we strongly recommend that you use a fixed schedule and then skip the predictive scheduling, but keep the functions that look at whether it's raining or if it's too windy outside, and decide to skip. So in that case, all it would do is it would run your schedule that you have entered in, unless the weather is not conducive to running your system, and then it would just skip. So outside of when you tell it to water, it's not going to run. Like I said, great option if you are comfortable with technology, or if you find yourself traveling a fair bit, or you're just kind of forgetful and you find yourself out the door and you just want to be able to have that control from no matter where you are. Next slide. Thing to remember is that even though it is called a smart controller, you are still smarter than it. And if any of you have smart devices, you probably know this to be true. You may have had something malfunction and you were expecting it to be perfect, but no irrigation controllers are perfect. So with these, you really want to watch out for what exactly the technology does. So with the predictive scheduling, it makes decisions about how often to water for you. So that can mean that it's deciding to water a lot, and you may not find out until you get your next water bill, and then you're surprised because it may be much bigger than you were anticipating. Same thing with those seasonal adjust type smart controllers. They may not stop at 100%. So you may have in your head that each zone is going to run 20 minutes, but because it's going over 100%, it may say 110 or 120. It's watering 24 minutes. And once again, those can stack up and surprise you with a high water bill. So like I said, for the Rachio, this applies to all smart controllers. We really strongly recommend that you use a fixed schedule in the summertime, and then do lots of research before you purchase a new controller about how it works, what some of the special functions are, and then maybe any quirks, because every controller has its quirks. Next slide. So in conclusion, we strongly recommend one program, one day, and one time. Do remember that throughout the year, seasonal adjust is going to be your best friend. And then if you notice that your sprinklers are running when you're not expecting them to be on, that's a red flag. You need to go check your controller, or if you're not comfortable with your controller or just unsure kind of what's going on, we recommend that you give us a call and schedule a free irrigation consultation. So what this service is one of our fantastic consultants like Brad or Marty or the rest of our team will come out to your home, they'll run your irrigation system, and they'll talk to you about any potential maintenance issues that they might see and leave you with recommendations for settings. And if you would like them to, they can enter those settings into the controller. So again, cannot more strongly recommend this to anyone who has concerns about their irrigation system, because it can be really beneficial and educational to just have that one-on-one discussion with someone who really understands irrigation. And then for those of y'all who are attending this webinar to receive WaterSaver rewards, WaterSaver reward points, we do have a quiz code, which is battery, sorry. And you will be able to find that link for the quiz on gardenstylesanantonio.com. It will be in the rewards calendar. Additionally, I am going to go ahead and post it here in a minute into the chat, so you can also access it there. Be sure to write down this code battery so that you have it when you go to take the quiz. And it is, of course, a reminder. Make sure that you do have a 9-volt battery in the back of your irrigation controller. That way, if the power goes out, you know that the clock is going to remain on time, the settings are going to stay, and then you don't end up with those surprise irrigation runs and a surprise high bill, because your setting or your clocks have changed. If you have any other questions after this webinar, you are more than welcome to submit them to the Garden Geek page at Garden Style SA, or of course, you can schedule an irrigation consult, and that's another great opportunity for that direct one-on-one question asking. And next slide. And I did just get a message. Someone asked, will the survey open after the webinar? That should, yes. When you close out of the webinar, there should be an immediate redirect for you to a web page where you can take the quiz. And let me post this in the chat to everyone. There you go. So it's in there now. And at this time, we are ready to start taking questions. So okay, so first question. If my controller does not look like the one that you were showing, Marty, where is the best place to get more information about my controller and how it works?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I forgot to mention that to refer to their owner's manual. If they don't have the owner's manual, they can always go to the manufacturer's website and download a user's manual for that particular controller. Just all they need is the model number of the controller. It's like, for instance, this one here is a Rainbird ESP TM2, and then go to rainbird.com and put it under user's manual, and you can probably download, or most likely download, a PDF file with the manual.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And I think one thing that you had recommended, I've heard you recommend in the past, is to just print it out and just like pin it to the wall next to your controller.
Right. They can either, like, if they want to keep it in their computer as a PDF, that's fine, that's their choice. But it's probably a lot better to print it out and, like you said, put it near the controller for reference.
Right.
They have those user manuals have really great troubleshooting questions.
Yes, and there's also, believe it or not, there's other water saving features that these controllers have. They're hidden, but they're there. Like, for instance, a lot of them have rain delay. Where we get a rain, and let's say we got a good rain today, but my date of water is Friday. Let's say if we could Saturday. Right, but I don't want to water on Saturday, so instead of turning off the controller or leaving the controller and leaving it off and forgetting to turn it back on, what you can do with this rain delay feature is that you could put a 7-day delay in it, and what will happen is, and keep it on auto, it'll skip your watering day, and then come Friday, the next or Saturday, it'll resume its programming again. And there's a lot of other neat features like that you can learn in the user's manual.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So another question, what is a program and how does one check if they have more than one program?
Brad will answer this one.
You need to find the program letter on your screen, and it'll say program. And so here's the deal with programs. Imagine if you're like a hotel and you need the golf course to come on one day, and you can have the pool come on a different time, the parking lot needs to come on at a different time. You have a different program for each one of those sections. Or if you're at a house, you might have the sprinklers run on their day, but you might have the drip come on. I don't know, some people have the drip come on more than once a week, but they have it come on a different schedule. So they'll use a different program for the drip. They'll put the sprinklers on A, they'll put the drip on B. And normally there's a letter for each one of those. And you'll see that letter on the screen, and you need to find it on one of these digital controllers. Sometimes it's very tiny. But if you learn where that letter is, and then just pay attention to it when you're working on the controller, and there will always be a program button there, and you always want to look at A, B, C, and D. Normally it's just the 4. That's what programs are for. It's because different parts of your landscape sort of require different schedules sometimes.
Okay, and then Marty, would you mind if I pass to you so you could show how to physically do that on the controller?
Yes.
Okay, and then just as a reminder to everyone, please go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A instead of the chat. Right, and Marty, you should be able to share the irrigation controller.
Yes,
now.
I got it. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and let's just say, for an instance, I want to water my grass one day and I want to water my drip, another day. So go to start times. And as you can see, program A is set for 7 a.m. So let's just say that's my grass. Okay. And then so what I want to do is I want to do another program, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit program select. And then what I'm going to do, let's say I'm going to put another 7 a.m. start on program B. Okay. And then of course I make sure there is no other start times and I'm good. So program B's first start time. So it's like programming A again. So what you're going to do is you're going to start programming your run times on the zones that you want. Remember, keep your grass zones off on 0. And let's say number 2 was my drip, I would add time. Number 3 is my grass, I'd add 0, so forth and so on. Okay, because you don't want, we're doing 2 programs for 2 different components here. We're doing it for grass and for drip. And then same thing with the run days. Program B, we would put our day in, whatever day we wanted. And again, let's say we wanted Thursday, then we would hit the plus. So now we got 2 programs in there now. There's a C, make sure everything's off on C. Remember, everything's off. That's not running. First program, 7 a.m. start on A. And then B, 7 a.m. start, but a different day. Okay? And same thing with the run times. There's my B, I would add my time, so forth and so on. And same thing with the run days on B.
So I'll
for
ask you, Marty, and Sarah and I are both going to ask the same question.
Go for it.
If it's on B, it's not running A, right?
No, because I put a different day.
But it is running it.
Yeah. Now what you can do, you can mix this up, and then it becomes stacking. What will happen is if you put it on the same day, and let's say I have a 7 a.m. start on my A, and then I have a 8 a.m. start on B, it's the B program is going to wait. So when you do A and B, normally you want to do another day. Okay, that's what you want to do, or you want to do another time. So I might do in the morning my A, my grass, or if I have a really big irrigation system that has, let's say, 24 zones in it. Well, on A, I'll do 1 through 12 in the morning, and then on B, I'll do 8 through 12 in the evening. So because there's no way in that water window I could get all 12 in. So remember, if I had a really big irrigation system, had 24 zones, like I said, for instance, 1 through 12 is in the morning, and then on B, it's at 7 p.m. in the evening. Because you kind of break that up, you break that big irrigation system up. You can use the programming for that too as well.
So for most people, though, would you recommend having more than one program?
No. If they have a normal irrigation system, 8 to 9, 10 zones, one time only on A. That's it. One program only.
And then what all do you have to have programmed in order for the system to run if you put it in auto?
If you put it on auto, whatever you have programmed, that's what's going to run. But like we discussed yesterday, if you have it over here on manual, it's going to run. It's going to run. It's going to run its cycle. It's still in automatic mode, believe it or not. It will be. The only time it's going to be not run is right there when it says off.
But if you have, like, let's say you don't have any start times, will it just pick a start time if you have it in auto?
No. You have to program the controller. If it doesn't have any start times, it could have days, it could have run times for the sections or zones. But if it doesn't have any start times, it will not run.
Okay, so you have to have your zones scheduled for times, you have to have a start time and then a start day, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need all 3 of those things. All 3 of those
Yes.
pieces: the days, the time, and the start time.
Right. In each individual program. Yes.
Okay. And then, so another question is, why do you recommend watering at 7 a.m. typically? Why not run at 7 p.m.? If you run in the morning, right, it gets hot during the day, and so wouldn't you lose all of that water?
Actually, there are a couple of answers to this question. But in San Antonio and Bexar County, a lot of times morning run times are recommended for St. Augustine grass or other kinds of grass. Because there are grass diseases, and fungus that you can get in your grass. If you leave it wet at night, a lot of times that's going to make those problems worse. And so a lot of times you'll hear you need to water your grass in the morning, and that's especially true for St. Augustine. As long as you water it early enough, 7 is early. So when we're not on water restrictions, sometimes people will start it a little earlier at daybreak. But to get the water into the ground as early as you can, and then it'll sink into the ground, and over the course of the day, it'll dry out. So it's not encouraging disease. Of course, if you work at Lackland and you need to see your sprinklers run, you might run it at night. But it's St. Augustine grass disease, and grass diseases is the reason you hear to run it in the morning a lot.
Okay, awesome. And sort of, I guess, in that line, why do you recommend only running once a week? Wouldn't it be better if you ran multiple times a week? Or I know some people are told by their irrigator to run their system twice.
You want your grass to have deep roots, so that it's tough. You want to raise your grass to be, drought tolerant. So by watering it once a week, if you put down a week's worth of water when you water it, it gets a good soaking, like a good rain. That's paradise in South Texas if that happens once a week. That's what you're doing with your sprinklers in the absence of rain. And then over the course of the week, it begins to dry out. And as it dries out, the grass will actually learn to sink deeper roots into that soil profile. And so your grass will be better armed for drought. So that's a standard practice in San Antonio. It has been for years, once a week watering. The only reason you would water more than once a week is if you were trying to establish new plants, or I don't know, if you're growing crops or something. What do you think, Marty?
That's true, yes. The deeper the root, the healthier the plant.
It's if you're watering it just like every day for a little short time, I mean, your plants will never grow deeper roots.
Yeah, well, believe it or not,
babies.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I come across where people will run multiple days and they'll have like 5 minutes, 4 days a week, and I actually tell them you're wasting water, and they look at me like bewildered, like, what do you mean? And I says, well, because in 5 minutes, how deep do you think you're getting? As far as getting down to the root zone, you're barely touching the root zone at 5 minutes. And then we get so hot down here, it evaporates really, really quickly. So, it's really, you're doing nothing. So once a week, like you said, Brad, once a week, deep and infrequent is the way to go. And especially down here in South Texas, that's the best way to go.
And why do some irrigators recommend twice in one day or back to back?
They're, in my opinion, they're just not educated. It's just, it's just what is taught, what they were taught. I mean, I was taught when I came up, learning irrigation many, many years ago, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, So you learn, and you will eventually learn that once a week is enough. It is enough.
There is one reason I can think of though, Marty, and Sarah just thought of it too.
And what's that?
Okay. Sometimes when it's set to run twice, it is because, like on the north side of San Antonio, outside 1604, where it's steep like that, where you say if you have your yard on a hillside, and you can't, and you're trying to run you're trying to run your sprinklers for 15 minutes, and you can't because the water just runs off.
Okay. Yeah.
Then you might run it twice.
Right.
It's called cycle and soaking. It's very intelligent thing to do. So you run it a little bit and give it a chance to soak in, and then you run it the rest and give it a chance to soak in, so it's not running off into the street.
Yeah, yes, they call that cycle and soak.
Yeah.
And so what that is that you break your run times in half for all the zones. So like, for instance, if I had 20 minutes on my zones as an example, then I would cut it to 10 minutes, but then I would have 2 start times. Would you like me to show you how to do that?
I do want to mention to our customers, you want to watch out for cycle and soaking. That's why you need to check all those start times, because sometimes it is set to cycle soak and you don't know it. And then you put a half hour of water in there and it's running it twice and it gets out of control real fast. So this is dangerous practice, but it's very intelligent. Go ahead, Marty.
Okay. So what you want to do, okay, so for instance, I'm going to put right here, 20 minutes on all the zones. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. That's an example for all the zones. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to start times, and I'm going to keep my 7 a.m. start, right? But what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back to my run times at 120 minutes down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut that in half, and I'm going to put 10 minutes. All right. Then I'm going to come back to start. You can either calculate how long it takes for half a cycle, or you can really make it easy on yourself by going to start time number 2 and just putting another 7 a.m. start. And what that is, that's stacking. That's what they call stacking in the irrigation world. So what happened is that the first one will come on at 7 a.m. and go through half of what you recommended as far as 20 minutes. So everything will be 10 minutes. And then after that cycle's over, even though it says 7 a.m. and it might be 9 a.m., the second start time is going to wait until the first one finishes, and it'll automatically come back on. And then the other 10 minutes will come on. And what's cool about that is if you have a slope, it gives the water enough time to infiltrate into the soil. And then that's really, really good. And there's like about an hour and a half or whatever, how long it takes to go around in a cycle for that water from the first start time to infiltrate into the soil. And that's what you call stacking or cycle and soak.
And this is deliberate stacking.
Yes, but remember, if you don't have a slope, and you really don't need this here, just one start time is all you really need. If your yard is flat and you don't need this to do this feature. You just keep it on to one start time because that's really all you need. And like you said, it's primarily
how many start times, just so our customers can see, our viewers can see, how many start times does this controller allow you to have?
This particular one, I believe, is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and cursor through it. There's my second, there's my third, and there's my fourth. And all programs, A, B, C, they have the same feature.
And the only way to know if there's content in there is just to look at it.
Right. And like I said, if you set your program A, and after you set your program A, go to program B, and if you have any information in there, zero it out. C, the same way, zero it out. That way, like I said, you only have one program and you see what you get. In other words, that you get what you see. That's it. The only program that's programmed in there should really be, and what I recommend for residential is program A. When you get to B, C, and D, you're really looking at commercial or large properties.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, we've obviously gotten worked up about cycling, so.
And I would assume if you're not sure about cycle and soak, the best thing to do at that point probably is just to schedule an irrigation consult and have you all come out and make that determination about whether or not it's something that someone wants to implement.
Right.
So if you're going to cycle and soak, write it on your controller, so in big letters.
That's a good idea.
Like The Shining.
Okay, so another question is if someone wants to install a new controller, like a smart controller, should they hire a specific irrigator? Is it okay to work with the person who installed their system? Should they do it themselves? What is the best way to go about that?
Okay, if they are mechanically inclined, it is really, really easy to do. What you want to do is, let's say I have this controller here, right here, and what I want to do is take a picture of my wiring, but in this case, they're all black. But normally, they're different colors is what they are, so that you have this reference on your camera on how it was wired, and on the terminal. And all the terminals on inside the controller are basically the same. You have zones, you have 24 volts, you have rain sensor, and you have your ground right here, your common. And that's the way I do it. And so that way, like I said, they're all color coded on the modern wiring, on the little mini wiring. They're all color coded. So if zone number 1 is red and yellow is number 2, what you would do is that's the way you would wire it back into the new controller, into the app-based controller. And then that's just, and all of them are mostly just plug in. So you don't have to even touch anything about as far as the transformer or anything. You just plug it in and just anchor it to the wall. And like I said, if you're mechanically inclined, it is really, really easy to do.
I will say a word of caution with that. I thought I was mechanically inclined and tried to install a smart thermostat and ended up blowing a fuse.
Oh.
So,
well, maybe that's just me saying it then, I guess.
well, no, yeah, I would just say, like, be honest with yourself about your mechanical capabilities if you take the route to install. But aside from that, if you do hire an irrigator, is there anything you need to be like mindful or someone specific that you have to hire?
So
Yes.
a licensed irrigator?
Yes, a licensed irrigator. Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then let's see. So kind of in line, especially with the smart controllers, do smart controllers know when watering restrictions are supposed to be? Will they adjust for that?
Sarah, you can answer that one.
Yeah, I can answer that one. So the answer to that one is no, which is one of the ways that smart controllers can, quote, get you in trouble, which again is why we strongly recommend a fixed schedule in the summertime, because if you're on a fixed schedule, especially one that's already at that 7 a.m. start time, if you know it'll be done by 11 a.m., you're already in the guidelines for stage 2. And you just don't have to worry about it. You don't have to wonder, like, is it going to run? Is it not going to run? And even on those seasonal adjust ones, if you set it for your day at 7 a.m., if it's bumping up to 110, 120%, and your system is running from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., now you're running from 7 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., and now you're outside stage 2 window. So you just really want to be mindful and keep an eye on those things if you do get a smart controller.
They're smart, but they're not that smart.
They're not smarter than you.
No.
Right. And then another question we've gotten is, how do you know what part of your yard each section, how do you know what part of the yard each section of your sprinkler system is watering? How do you figure out what zone is where?
You put on your bathing suit.
But no, what you
off.
want to do is to get familiar with your irrigation system, and to do that really quickly. What you would do is you would go through it manually, like on this particular controller here, and all the more modern controllers, not necessarily the older controllers, but the more modern controllers, they have an easy manual start. Instead of going to manual station, like this particular one only does one station at a time because it has this other feature. I believe Weathermatic, Hunter, Rainbird, I don't know what Toro does, but they all have this one button feature that you can push down to get the system started. So what you want to do is you want to get a piece of paper and draw your yard out with your house. And so what you want to do is you want to go ahead and hit the right cursor. And some of them just have a cursor up here where you hold it down. It's the next cursor, but it's the right one.
You just push play.
Right, and you just hold it down, and it'll get started. Zone number 1, go and draw it on your little map of your yard, what it is and where it's at. And after you're looking at that, after looking at that, come back to the controller and just hit the right cursor again, and go to zone 2, and so forth and so on, and map everything out in around your house of where that particular zone is. This is always this too is very, very helpful as far as like, I do recommend going through your irrigation system at least once a month. So once a month, so there's nothing broken, there's nothing broken, everything's working, no clogged heads or anything, and it's working fine. This is a fast way to go through it as well. So you just hold the right cursor down, and it's going to start, and you go and check out number 1, zone number 1, area number 1, or section number 1, make sure everything's running good, nothing's spraying onto the sidewalk, nothing needs to be adjusted, so forth and so on, no broken heads. Come back to the controller. Number 2, same thing. Make sure everything's okay. Go back to the controller. Number 3, and go through your whole irrigation system. It'll take you less than probably 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And
this controller doesn't have it, but a lot of them have a test all stations.
Yes, they do. A 2 minute. They do have a test 2 minute station. Yeah, they have a test all zones section. Yes. But like I said, the more modern ones, the ones that are coming out now, they all have this feature as far as just holding down the right cursor.
Awesome. And then we've got one last question, which is a really good question. One person asks, why isn't my rain sensor working? It says active, but my system still runs in the rain.
Okay, there could be multiple reasons for that.
What is the lifespan of one of those rain sensors, Marty?
That I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if there's been a study on it. To be honest with you, I don't know. But there could be other problems as well. And I was going to let you know. Okay, for one, it could be the wiring. It could be the wiring that the wiring was cut somewhere, or it's just it wasn't hooked up correctly to begin with. But this right here, like the wireless ones like this, The majority of the problems is the rain sensor battery. I don't know if you could see over here to my right over here. I don't know if you could see that, but there is what they call the transmitter. That's what's hanging outside on your fence or on your eave of your home. Well, that has a battery in it, and it transmits and it communicates with the receiver. And this is your receiver right here. And what it does, it communicates. But that's like a battery on anything else. It's going to die eventually. And so when it doesn't receive the signal from the transmitter anymore, it can't work anymore. It can't turn off the controller anymore. And that can be another reason why it doesn't work. So it is, the majority of them have a signal light on them, or they'll like this particular one here shows you the signal strength. If it's blank, then you know that battery's dead. A lot of other ones, Irritrolls, what they'll have like a little light with a little antenna, and if it's green, it's communicating with the transmitter. But once there's no green light and it's blank, that transmitter is dead. A lot of the transmitter, the more modern transmitters and wireless rain sensors they're very easy to change the battery out. It's just a watch battery, and they're very easy to change out. You probably go to the manufacturer's website and it probably has a video. I wouldn't be surprised on how to change the battery. But if it's a hard wire, like I said, it could be a wiring issues. A lot of times they put these things on the fence and the wire's coming up, through a PVC pipe, and then it's exposed along the fence. And a lot of times the weed eater catches them, and therefore you have a broken wire. And that could be or it could just be the disc, like Brad was saying, the disc no longer expand. The rain sensor is so old that it doesn't expand enough to shut down the button on the rain sensor.
It may not be obvious, but luckily the new rain sensors are mostly wireless, like this one. And
yes,
they're easy to replace. You
yes.
don't have to run a wire through the ground.
No. And if you feel intimidated by changing the battery and the transmitter, just get a new rain sensor.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. That's all for today. Thank you both Brad and Marty for having this wonderful presentation and giving us so much great information. Because there's so many things to know about controllers and understanding how to set them correctly. And thank you to everyone who has joined us today for this webinar. Don't forget, if you want your Water Saver Rewards points to take the quiz, the link is available in the chat. It is available on the events calendar at gardenstylesa.com, and you should be redirected to it after you close out of this webinar. As a reminder, the quiz is only open for today. And as a final reminder, the quiz code is BATTERY, BATTERY. So thank you both Marty and Brad for the expertise. We've really enjoyed listening to you, and thank you to everyone for attending today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, everybody out there.